Hello and welcome to week one of Introduction to Rhetoric 106, Rhetoric and Writing for the Workplace. Now, hopefully by this point you have listened to my syllabus lecture and you've listened to my navigating the course lecture and you're not overwhelmed with information. And if you are overwhelmed with information, I would suggest go take a break, go walk around your room for a while, get a drink before you come back and get to listen to me yet again for this information, but I promise you this information is going to be helpful. So week one overview is really, we're going to start focusing on really why this class. What are the important parts of workplace writing? And then what are also some of the important parts of the class? So you will see, here I'm at the modules, as we talked about in navigating class, you definitely want to go to the modules. Here's week one overview, includes all the goals, lecture videos, course readings, and we'll go there in just a moment. And then obviously you have your assignments. Now, introductions is going to be due on Thursday because that's the first day of class. And that's why it's the only time. Everything else is Wednesdays and Sundays. Your discussion post is going to be due on Sunday. And that's going to be a response to all of the readings. Now, you don't have to necessarily respond to a specific reading. It's more as you've done all the readings and watched the videos that you're responding to those. And then you also have a professional email due, and that assignment is also connected specifically to the readings. So let's go get into the readings, and I'm going to give you just kind of the highlights of the readings so that you know where we're going and what I really want you to pay attention to. Okay, so I'm going to click on week one overview. Here's our objectives, our introduction. So again, some of the links don't open in Canvas, so you have to click the title at the top of the page to access them. Here's the Canvas help guides that I referenced in my navigation video, as well as my navigation video. So if you're concerned about where to go to find information, watch that video and look at those resource guides, and that should help. So I decided here is the syllabus lecture, my video on how to navigate, my bio and contact preferences. Please call me Erin. I prefer Erin over Dr. Jensen. There's a video introduction to writing in the workplace. There's an article on college writing versus workplace writing. So it definitely talks about, how is academic writing different than workplace writing? And often workplace writing is written very specific for a specific task, for a specific purpose in specific ways, often very short, sweet, and to the point. It's often you're writing for your boss, you're writing for colleagues, you're writing for a different division, you're using jargon and language that is used within your office that everyone knows. While academic writing is often length is what's valued, and so the longer you make it, often the more that the professors are like it and engaged with it. And so there's some very clear differences between how we write in academic settings versus how we write in professional settings. And that's one of the reasons why this class was created, is for those of you who have work experience already to start thinking about the writing that you already are doing and how you can improve that writing. And so then there's also a short article on how our writing skills are beneficial. I would say in any job, there is some form of writing. Last semester, I had someone who was working as a welder and made the argument that welding doesn't involve much writing, so he wasn't sure he could really do the assignment where we were evaluating the writing that goes on. And so I asked him through Zoom to tell me what kind of writing to think about throughout his day at work. What kind of writing does he do? And he talked about he had to fill out an incident report form. He had to fill out a form to request more materials for the company. He typed out an email to his supervisor responding to something that had been asked. And his company also is using Slack. So he was also on Slack, which, if you're not familiar with, is a sort of like a social media type program that you can really communicate informally between colleagues and bosses and everything like that. That usually is run internally in a company. And I said, so see, there you go. There's your four. That's how you're using writing. And while he initially thought there wasn't any forms of writing, we're not talking in this class about academic writing, what would normally be academic writing. We are talking about workplace writing specifically and how to improve our workplace writing. Now, I will I'll just let you know for the last assignment, you will make more of a thesis statement, and that will help you as you go on. And we'll talk more about academic writing at that point. But definitely, this first couple of assignments in these first couple of weeks are really focused on the writing that you're doing now in your current jobs, and how can you make that writing better. So, for example, that's really those readings at the beginning, and then a professional email. So you said I'll talk about this a little bit in the various lectures, but I used to live in Nevada. I actually moved here from Nevada, and when I worked in Nevada, the little town I lived in was surrounded by gold and silver mines. And one of the things I did as part of my job as being a professor, I was a professor there at a small college, is I would go to the mining offices, and I would give workshops on on better communication skills, on better writing skills, on etc. Very similar to some of the topics that we'll be talking about in this class. And I remember one time there was a boss who was very upset with his employees because he didn't feel like they were reading his emails. And I said, well, okay, will you show me an email that you sent? And he had sent the most dense, longest email that I've ever seen in my life. If you copied and pasted it over into Word or Google Docs, it was like 3 single-space pages of information. No headings, no bullet points, nothing in bold, nothing that was capitalized for more emphasis, just solid text for 3 pages. And he was very upset that some of the really important information was like in the middle of that, not even at the beginning or at the end. And he said, they just aren't reading my emails. And I very nicely and very politely suggested to him that I could see why they weren't reading his emails. That if we're looking at an email, we want the main point in either the subject line or in that very first couple sentences. Why are you emailing somebody? Also, to identify who you are. In his case, he had several hundred employees. In my case, in most of my classes, I have 25, but I have multiple classes. And when people send me emails that don't identify their name or what class they're in, I'm often like, who are you? Especially at first. So in an email, in any kind of email situation, you want to make sure that you identify very quickly off who you are and why you are emailing. And then you want to, in his case, I suggested to him that he use headings to break up the information, that he very much vastly shorten what he was trying to communicate, and use bullet points as well, or 1, 2, and 3 if he wanted people to work through steps, and to keep his emails within a screen ability to read so they didn't have to scroll. And his employees were also frustrated with his emails because they just said there was just too much information that a lot of them were like, we don't have time to read 3 single-space pages of dense information that is very hard to tell what's important and what's not. And so this employer was very willing to work on it, and he changed how he emailed, and he emailed me a couple of weeks after that meeting and said he couldn't believe how much better people were following his directions and were responding to his email. Again, it was a simple change, right? A really long, intense email got shortened down to here's some bullet points of the main things you need to pay attention to. Here's the steps you need to take. Here's what I'm asking you to do. Right in that first couple sentences, this is the main point of my email. But it made all the difference in the world for communication. So that is one reason why I want you to send me an email. You're not going to actually send me an email. You're going to post it into the Canvas assignment, but you're going to include who you are, what class you're in, um, a little bit about your background, and what other classes you've taken that involve writing, so I have a little bit more better understanding of that. But in the assignment itself, it says what questions I want you to answer. So that's on our professional email grouping. Now, peer review in the workplace. There are times, think about in your own workplace setting, where people have reviewed what you have done. I know often my background, I've been a public school teacher, I've worked in an office, I've worked in various professional settings. I've been a grant writer. I did social media managing for a while. I've done a lot of various activities and things within various workplace writing. I've been a swim coach and worked at a community pool and was the pool manager. Um, but within all of those, there's often email communication, but there's also reviews that go on, people that come in and review your work, whether they're sitting and observing your interactions with other people, whether they're looking at the emails that you send, whether they're looking at the jobs that you're doing, supervisors coming to observe you. And so that's the peer review that happens in the workplace. There's also going to be some peer review opportunities in this class. And starting next week, week 2, you're going to peer evaluate each other's resume rough drafts. And so I want you to have some knowledge about thinking about how does that work? How do we, when we exchange papers online, which we will, and Canvas sets up to do it automatically, how are you going to evaluate what they have done? And so the reading here, this article about peer review in our class assignments, will be helpful to give you information about that. So that is the overview of the week. All these are relatively short articles that should not take too much time to read through. I would encourage you to skim them and not try to read every single word, get the general information, and then our 3 assignments, which is your introductions, just introduce yourself, who you are, what your major is, a review of the week 1 readings, again, a response to that information, and then you will have the professional email, and that will be week 1. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Just email me, and I'm happy to reply and clarify as much as possible. Thanks, everyone.